You're listening to the Escape into Gaming podcast with your host, Nathan, aka Kilnieth. Join us as we explore escapism into the various weird and wonderful worlds of video games. Whether it's something immersive and first person, or something deep and strategic, we will be escaping boredom, stress, pain, and pressure with dragons, racing, space, and sneaking. And without further ado, let's get started.
Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Escape into Gaming podcast, where we explore and deep dive into escapism within video games. In today's episode, we will be covering games that we are currently playing and escaping into, as well as going over our focus game, which for this week is actually going to be 2 games. It's both Animal Crossing and Harvest Moon Friends of Mineral Town. So following on from previous episodes, my immersive sim binge has continued with a vengeance, and I've now completed a run through of Dishonored 2, playing as Emily rather than Corvo, because I fancied a bit of a change. I played Dishonored 1 years and years back, and I really don't know what was holding me back from completing Dishonored 2 before. I've had it for absolutely ages. I think I bought it on the PS4 at release or something, but other than briefly spending some time in the first level, I really couldn't get into it at the time. It might have been one of those situations where I was going through another genre cycle where suddenly I have no more interest in anything to do with Sims, and maybe it was the time when I started playing turn-based RPGs or something. I tend to go through those cycles, but yeah, it's been interesting going back into the Dishonored universe and playing another game in that franchise. And Dishonored 2 is absolutely a fantastic sim game. Whilst the world isn't quite as bleak and depressive as the first game, it leans a bit more into the outsider and the kind of occultist elements that the first game teased. And I must say, Karnaca is a refreshing change of scenery. It's all sunny, and it has, like, I'd say if Dunwall in the first game had kind of a London aesthetic, but whale punk, Karnaca definitely has more of like maybe an Italian or Spanish influence, where everything's bright and the buildings are made out of like white material instead. Definitely feels like a completely different setting. And rather than the rat swarms that the first game has, this game has bloodfly swarms, which I hate. This game has to have the most realistic fly-type creature in a video game, like the way they're animated and the wings flap, and oh my god, the noises. The noises are absolutely horrendous. If anybody doesn't like flies, you won't like these bloodflies. Although I guess that's kind of the point, isn't it? And it was really cool to see, like, with Emily, you've got a new set of powers. I believe, I need to do an actual Corvo playthrough, but I think if you do play as Corvo, you have the same powers as Dishonored 1. But yeah, Emily's got her own unique set of powers, which is really cool to see. And once again, like every game that Arcane does, you've got tons of options for player freedom, including, interestingly, with the bone charms. I remember in the first game you could find these bone charms they're kind of like perks that you can find in the levels and apply that'll give you various effects. But on this one you can actually like dismantle them, and then you learn that effect, and if you make some custom bone charms, you can combine multiple effects together, so you can both have even more effects applied to you, but you can mix and match stuff that works with your playstyle, which is really, really fun. And like gameplay wise itself, there seem to be a lot more choices in the game overall. Like, slight spoiler alert here, but there was one mission I did in the game where you actually swap between the present and the past, and I knocked this one guy out just to make sure that he didn't notice me and, you know, wouldn't become a problem as I'm trying to sneak around. And I was actually shocked when I went back to the present and everything had changed. I actually stopped for a moment and I was like, oh, wait, I've actually changed the future here. And it did actually have some pretty drastic effects on the rest of the game, especially when I saw another one of the main characters and they changed. I'm not going to go into details, but wow, that was a jaw-dropping moment, I'll tell you. So I am looking forward to doing a Corvo playthrough, maybe with a little bit more chaos this time around, but damn, do I recommend it. Like, most Arcane games have been on sale for Black Friday, so I've managed to pick up every single Arcane game, other than Redfall, because we don't talk about Redfall. But it will likely be on sale again during or after the festive period, so hey, if you've not played Dishonored 2, definitely give it a thought. Hugely replayable game as well, so you'll definitely get your money's worth. So yes, in today's episode, I actually wanted to cover two games in one, and I've put them under the title of Simulated Socialisation because that's really what these games were to me, and if I were to group them both together and try and apply a genre to them, like if I was making up genres for video games, that's kind of what I'd call these games. One of them, obviously Harvest Moon is one of the games and Animal Crossing is the other game, and Harvest Moon you can put into the whole farming genre of games. I guess another thing they called quite often is cozy games. A lot of people refer to them as cozy games. But yeah, we're talking about the original Animal Crossing for the Nintendo Gamecube, or at least it's original insofar as the West is concerned, because Japan would actually get this version of the game on the N64. I think it might have been the N64 disk drive, actually. And yeah, Animal Crossing was released in 2004 in Europe, and the second game, Harvest Moon Friends of Mineral Town, was released for the Game Boy Advance, also in 2004 in Europe. And around 2004 and 2005, I was still struggling quite a bit at secondary school. Bullying was an ever-present occurrence, and the problems that I had at home were only getting worse, really. But I had started having a little bit more freedom in terms of going outside, hanging around with friends. Quite often I would take my bicycle with me and meet up with a few friends. We'd hang out in this big park area. Not one of those kind of play parks, it was just this big forested area with paths running through it and stuff. And one of my friends at the time was someone that I'd actually known from a primary school. He was a primary school friend that lived close enough that I could cycle to his house. And eventually we started this bit of a trend where I would quite embarrassingly frequently sleep over at his house, or rather his mother's house. And I have to say, like, looking back at it as an adult now, I do feel quite a bit sorry for his mother. So if you are, by any chance, listening and you do recognise me, I am sorry for being a burden. But yeah, stopping over at their house was a breath of fresh air for me. It was an escape from all of the things happening at home. And as it happened, my friend was a huge Nintendo and Sega fan. And it was through him that I was introduced to an absolute bunch of games. He had both a Dreamcast and a Gamecube at his house, whereas back at my house, my parents had gone for PlayStation 2, and the famous saying we had was that we were getting no more consoles as a rule. Like, never again, we don't need any more game consoles ever again. And believe me, that pretty much stuck. But I did, however, have a Game Boy Advance, that original like horizontal purple one. And man, did we have a good time. When I went to my friend's house, we would hook his Game Boy Advances up to the GameCube and play things like Zelda Four Swords Adventures, or even with one of us playing Wind Waker on the GameCube and the other one controlling, or trolling the other with what was called the Tingle Tuner. And it was such a unique aspect to that console and those games, like connecting a Game Boy Advance to it and having all these various ways of either interacting with an existing game or like combining experiences together. There were lots of games where you could transfer something to the Game Boy Advance. I remember he also introduced me to Sonic Advance, and Sonic Adventure, and I had Sonic Advance at the time. And it turns out you could actually like move one of the Chow pets, the little virtual pets you can make, like between Sonic Advance on the Game Boy to Sonic Adventure on the GameCube. So that was, I don't think we're ever going to get anything like that again. I guess the closest thing is when you've got mobile phone companion apps, but the level of connectivity between the GameCube and the Game Boy was absolutely amazing. And yeah, two of the games that he introduced me to were actually Animal Crossing on the GameCube and Harvest Moon Friends of Mineral Town. Animal Crossing is quite a hard game to describe if you haven't seen or experienced it for yourself. I think a lot of people have probably seen it from New Horizons on the Switch, or at least been made aware of it if they weren't already. But I guess they are, like I say, what I would class them as is social simulation games where you enter a town filled with a variety of characters and you just kind of exist in this space. Like really what you decide to do is completely down to the player, whether you decide that you want to find ways to earn money, maybe discovering who your favourite characters are. You can customise your house and your clothing, and there is like an element of developing the town and improving the town, especially like when it comes to the local shop. In this particular setting, however, for me, it was really a way to stay connected with my friend in a weirdly indirect way, because the way the town works in Animal Crossing on the GameCube is that each memory card has the town itself, and in that town you've got up to 4 player houses, so 4 players can essentially live in this town on a single memory card. And all 4 of these houses occupy the same square space on the map, so you can actually see your neighbours' houses, and you can even head into them and check out how it is that they've customised their house. And on top of that, you could actually send mail or even sell items to the friends living in the same town as you. You had this little what's called a gyroid set outside your house, and you can put items in either to store them or set a price for them. And if one of your friends decides, oh, I like the look of that item, they can actually buy it from you. And there was this full mail system that went pretty crazy. Like, there were all these different types of paper with all these patterns and designs on them, and then you can go to the post office and either send a letter to one of the NPCs, or you can send it to one of the friends, like the actual other players in the same memory card. So we ended up sharing this town between me, my friend, and his little sister. So there were 3 of us kind of living in this town. And I remember it always being like super exciting heading back to his house in real life, because I could hop on Animal Crossing and check my mailbox, see if they sent any mail or replied to any of mine, and seeing what had changed with the town since I last visited. Whilst the game itself wasn't multiplayer in terms of being able to play together at the same time, we did end up having this continuous narrative of what was going on in the town. I remember his little sister had set up this like dedicated area of the town to be a bit of a flower garden, and she would yell at me anytime I was running around there, since running in-game actually destroys the flowers if you're not careful. So I was always like given stern warnings not to run through the flower garden. I myself had ended up setting up this, in air quotes, farming company, where I set up a large orchard of, I think it was orange trees at the time. So there were all these trees like perfectly laid out in the most optimized grid, so I could rapidly harvest them to sell for more money. And my friend himself, he was actually really focused on customizing his home. I remember being amazed by his house. Like, he had basically a manor. He had multiple floors, he had side rooms, he had a basement and everything. It was super impressive, especially when I just had the basic house with a tiny little room in it. I remember one time going into his house, like probably the first time, and he had this bedroom set up to be like the perfect gamer room. It had a humongous TV at one side of it, had a Gamecube sat in front of it, because of course it did. There were various NES consoles, like NES consoles, lying around the room, as well as a Master Sword from Zelda in one corner, and this huge suit of armour in the other corner. And I'm pretty sure like the theme for the whole room was this white and blue striped pattern, because you can apply like floors and wallpaper and stuff like that, and he had a bed that matched as well, so it was very like a modern gamer bedroom, I guess. And the NES consoles themselves, you could actually play them in game. Each of the consoles, you walked up to and pressed the A button. It contained a full version of an NES game, so we'd sometimes compete for high scores on these, or even better, going back to the whole Game Boy Advance thing again, you could actually plug your Game Boy Advance in, transfer the NES game to the GBA, and we could actually play them kind of side by side, competing for scores or getting so far in Balloon Fight. I remember Balloon Fight. Was it Balloon Fight or Balloon Trip? There's like one where you're a character and you press the A button to flap along. It's kind of like Flappy Bird before that was a thing. And you try to get as far as you can through these obstacles. In fact, now that I think on it, I think there was like 2 game modes to Balloon Fight. I think one was kind of an arena thing where you pop enemy balloons, and then another one was the kind of side-scrolling where there's obstacles that you have to avoid and stuff. But yeah, we loved it. It was my first time playing those NES games. I'd never experienced them growing up with a Mega Drive myself. But yeah, heading into the basement of his house, I remember being very impressed at the collection of shirts and umbrellas that he kept down there. He had all of his favourite ones lined up in a neat, organised rows and stuff. And one time I remember when I headed to his house in real life, and he was really, really excited to show me something, because he discovered a bit of a secret in Animal Crossing itself that he thought I would absolutely love. So he headed to the southernmost part of the map where the beach connects to the lands, and he plugged his Game Boy into the console and kind of like moved north, because the game was set up onto these grids. So like when you left one of the squares of the map, it would kind of like the camera would pan to the next grid and then back. So he plugged his Game Boy in, moved to the grid to the north, then back down to the south where there was this pier down there. And instead of it being empty, like it normally was, there was a new character there called Captain. And my friend promptly hopped on the boat, and we listened to a very merry tune from the sailor before arriving at a whole new island. And this was mind-blowing to me. Like, this island was complete with its own villager who lived there that we could interact with. It had lots of coconut trees, which was great for my farming company's profits. And there was a whole new house there that actually all 3 of us could share and customise. Like, regardless of whose Game Boy you plugged in at the console, you always access the same island. That was just kind of your ticket there. But it was like every kid's dream, like having your own secret hideout, and we had ours on this island, just hidden away from the rest of the town that we could head to at any point and just keep customising it, setting different floors up, putting some stuff there that we all wanted to share, and yeah, absolute dream. This game presented such a unique way to socialise with your friends, because again, it wasn't multiplayer in the traditional sense, so we would end up taking turns to play it, but we could all interact with one another indirectly via sending mail or building up a little island hideout and sharing cool finds with one another. And we could, of course, also interact with the villagers themselves. The animal NPCs that occupy most of the town I remember one in particular, there was this guy called Cube, who was a particular favourite of mine, because he's this adorable little penguin who's got crosses for eyes, and he actually wore a GameCube logo t-shirt. So instant favourite of mine. And I remember one of the most interesting aspects of the game's social system with the villagers was what I'll call the catchphrase system, where each of the NPCs would often have their own friend? What? They'd have their own phrase that they'd say at the end of sentences. And I remember conspiring with my friend's little sister one time, when my friend wasn't watching. We spent the day going around all of the villagers setting their catchphrase to Barfo, because both of us liked this sheep character called Vesta. So suddenly when my friend played the game next, every single NPC was finishing off all their dialogue with Barfo. So we had a good laugh about that. And another unique system to the game was the museum. You can actually collect various fish, paintings and fossils and have them analysed and kept in the museum. And each exhibition credits the person who found it. So we're all kind of working together to contribute to the museum with the goal of completing it and capturing every fish, finding every painting, finding all of the fossils. But we, at the same time, we could kind of compete in terms of like who'd made the most contributions to the museum as well. It was as if the three of us had our own little town, our own way to escape reality, really, and have a little society all to ourselves, essentially, with the villagers we liked being present, and collectively bankrolling Tom Nook's various store upgrades as well. The other game that really drew me in at this time was Harvest Moon Friends of Mineral Town. My friend actually lent me the cartridge for this game, so I was able to take it with me and play the game when I wasn't at his house. And I still remember setting up my very first farm on that game, called Hyrule Farm, with Link as the dog and Epona as the horse, because yes, I was that Zelda obsessed. If you've ever played Stardew Valley, which I imagine a lot of people have since it's one of the most popular games ever, then you'll likely understand the premise of Harvest Moon, which was basically the inspiration for Stardew Valley. You visit a farm in your youth, playing with the animals and getting to know the old man that runs it, and I believe it's like a holiday that you and your parents are having, like a break away from regular city life. And as time goes on, you become a bit of a pen pal to this old man, continuously sending letters back and forth, until one day, years and years into the future, those letters eventually stop. So your character decides to visit the farm to find out what's happened, only to learn that the old man has unfortunately passed away and the farm has been left completely desolate. The mayor of the town actually lets you know that in the old man's will, he'd requested that the farm be passed down to you, and now that you're here, this is how your farming journey begins, basically. And I remember this introduction being super, super powerful to me. Like, I was just thinking, wow, what a lucky guy. Like, he could escape from all the issues of modern city life and stuff and just settle down in a small village running a farm. I think it likely inspired me in real life as well, because I actually ended up working on a horse stable for a while. There was a bit of a poorly horse there that nobody really looked after, so I was like, oh, can I come here at weekends and, like, you know, brush this horse? And he wasn't able to be ridden, but I'd lead him around and stuff. He was called Kilnsey as well, which actually, now that I think about it, Kilnsey might have inspired my username Kilniath. I wonder if that was a little subtle nod there. But yeah, in Harvest Moon, Friends of Mineral Town, you start the game on this dilapidated farm. You have a basic set of tools to get started growing a very meagre amount of crops, and a short walk away you've got the actual village itself. Going into the village and speaking to the inhabitants, many of them will actually remember you from the days when you first visited the village and farm, commenting on your new role as keeper of the farm and offering help and advice. And I think a lot of the people around your age probably were your age when you came and visited as well. So everybody's grown up and matured, and you're all now living your lives. Harvest Moon not only gave you this opportunity to settle down with some more, relaxed gameplay, planting and watering your crops, eventually getting animals and feeding them and brushing them, but it also gave you this entire little society to engage yourself with. You get to know each of the villagers, learning their various personalities, their likes and dislikes, and over time you'll find your favourites, or perhaps even decide on a partner for your virtual you. Presentation-wise, like pretty much every Game Boy Advance game, it's made up of what I would say are delightful, colourful sprites. They were very visible on the original Game Boy Advance, provided you had a light on, of course. But potentially looking a little bit washed out on a Game Boy Advance SP with a backlight. Because I think a trick a lot of developers used at the time, because the original Game Boy Advance didn't have a backlight, is they would actually make the sprites a lot brighter, so they were a bit more visible on that screen. And interestingly, the game uses the same visual style as the earlier Harvest Moon game that was on the N64 and PlayStation 1, which I hadn't played at the time, but that game used an isometric viewpoint, whereas Friends of Mineral Town adopts a traditional top-down view instead. As you play through the game, you'll progress through various seasons and years, each of which come with their own changes to the atmosphere, the music, and the goings-on in the village, and of course it dictates the crops that you're able to plant and harvest for that season. You'll clear out the wreck of a field that you started with, chopping up pieces of wood to collect lumber, which you can eventually use for like fences and building projects, and smashing stones with a hammer to clear out space, and of course laying down your crops. And each of these activities drains your character's stamina bit by bit, and you need to be careful not to overdo it because you risk collapsing and waking up in the medical centre, which is not good. You lose a bunch of time doing that. Ask me how I know. And these kind of games, like Harvest Moon and, Stardew Valley and stuff like that, they end up following their own rhythm or schedule, where your character will wake up in the morning and gradually you start to build together an idea of what it is you want to achieve each day and what you actually want to achieve long term as well. So I'd often start by heading out, watering and replanting any crops, followed up by visiting each of the animals, which I remember in my kind of main save for this. I had a chicken coop filled with little chickens, I had a couple of cows and a single sheep, and of course Epona the horse. So I would go around, interact with each of them to make sure I'd collected any products they produce, like milk, eggs, wool and stuff like that. And when you interact with them as well, they get like a little heart pop-up appears in a speech bubble, so you can keep doing that to make sure they're happy and healthy. And then any additional stamina that I had left over would be saved for the afternoon. So I'd first head into the village and chat with all the NPCs, and if I managed to collect something previously that they'd like, I would save that and gift it to the special someone that I was pursuing. And often when you went into town, you'd come across these little kind of cutscenes where something's occurring between one or more of the NPCs, and sometimes you'll have the opportunity to either provide input during these scenes, or maybe once the scene is over you can follow up with those involved immediately afterwards. So it kind of gave the village itself this element of mystery where you never knew what would happen when you visited, whether a cutscene would trigger or who you'd see wandering the streets. Everyone kind of had their own schedule and did their own thing. In the afternoons, I would often visit the hot springs, which let you passively regain some stamina, in exchange for time, of course, because you sit and wait there. And after that, I would head into the mines in search of ores. The ores you could actually use to upgrade all of your tools, increasing their effectiveness, and overall it allows you to kind of spend less stamina to achieve much more coverage, especially when you're like watering crops and such. So I guess that's kind of one of the key forms of progression in the game. You find yourself being able to achieve more and more each day as you upgrade your tools and time goes on. And balancing all of these aspects is key, because especially to start off with, you will not have enough time or stamina to get everything you want to achieve done. So it's really down to you as the player to really decide where you want to focus your time. And because of this balancing act that you're performing, it's really easy to find yourself getting absorbed in the game, like spending hours and hours at a time looking after your farm, chatting with the villagers, recruiting various harvest sprites who can then help out on your farm, and also participating in the village festivals. So it really is a perfect little escape from reality. This idea of having a whole separate world and a simpler lifestyle really does encompass everything escapism, giving you that kind of space and time to disassociate a little bit from reality and take a break and spend some time with fewer pressures and stresses, really, other than the stress of the farming and stuff like that, but that's an enjoyable form of stress. And yeah, Harvest Moon really gave me that break from the reality that I was dealing with at the time. It allowed me to not only spend my gaming time in a more peaceful manner, but I would also personally argue that games like this teach you kind of the value of friendship and connection. Like, you can't replace real life connections and friendships. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I would argue that these games that simulate social connections can still teach you positive values, such as like listening to others, listening to the troubles and challenges that they're going through. And it kind of teaches you a level of empathy and caring. And in particular, like this game, for me, doubled as a way of connecting me and my friend, the friend who lent me the cartridge, because every time we'd next meet and I'd go to his house and we'd be playing other games and stuff, we'd still share stories of our progress through Harvest Moon. So I would like show him what I'd been doing on my farm and the things that I'd done in the game. And he'd recall when he was playing the game, like the things he'd done as well. So it was really a way of connecting us both together as well. Even though we're like playing the game completely separately, it was a bonding moment, something that we could share. So, have you played a Harvest Moon or Animal Crossing game? Who was your favourite villager? Please do let me know in the comments on YouTube, Discord, or Patreon. Thank you once again for listening to this episode. I've done a fair bit more work on my audio this time around, including managing to actually find and reattach my pop filter, so hopefully everything is sounding a lot nicer now. This episode was another shorter one, though don't worry, I have a bit of a feeling next week's episode might be a considerably longer one. As always, please do leave any thoughts, feedback or comments on YouTube, Discord or Patreon, and consider sharing the podcast too. I've actually set up escapeintogaming.com, so it should now be a lot easier to share, and it gives you a button of, listen to on ... and when you click it, it shows you every platform you can listen to it on, so you can listen to it on whatever platform of your choice. And in another little bit of news as well, I have set up a playlist on YouTube called Bits from the Podcast. So if you don't have time to listen to the full episodes, there are various segments from the podcast that have kind of been broken off into their own little mini episode there. So do check them out if you're interested in bits. Maybe the focus game for one episode is something you're not hugely interested in, but you do want to maybe give it a quick listen to see if maybe you would find it interesting, for example. And of course, if you are interested in supporting the podcast, helping me to grow and evolve as a creator, and getting early access to the episodes, do consider becoming a member on Patreon. But regardless of any of that, please do have yourself a cracking weekend. Maybe you'll do a spot of farming, or dust off the old Animal Crossing save, and get yelled at by the villagers for leaving them for probably years. But yes, I do hope you have a fantastic weekend, and please join us next week for episode 6, The Mind Game.